Hi guys, Jack Rogers here. I hope everybody is well and had good weekends. And in this video, I wanted to go through some landing page recommendations in terms of structure, in terms of just general flow, so you guys can maximize the success of your Facebook ads. Now, one thing I wanted to go into before we sort of dive into the recommendations, and I know we have done a brief training on this before, but it's really important to sort of highlight this again, is going to be the importance of the first hero section on your landing page. So the hero section is essentially the first part of your website where users land where they don't have to scroll for anything. So if I just pop you on pause and load up a website, I can show you an example of a hero section. So if we jump over into the Facebook Ads Mastery funnel, as you can see, this first section here, where I don't have to scroll, is the hero section. Now, the reason why you want to put such a strong focus on your hero section is because if you take this diagram from the NN group, it quite clearly shows that 57% of viewing time happens above the fold, and a massive 74% of viewing time happens in the first two sections of the website. So your main focus in the hero section should be articulating your offer, showcasing your benefits, reducing risk, and clearly stating who your product and service is for. If you tick all of those boxes, you are going to see a much longer time spent on site, and the viewing time of these following sections will dramatically increase as a result. So with that being said, how would I design this? So the first hero section, I am going to have an attention grabbing headline. I am then going to have my main headline and sub-headline. I'm going to have a VSL, a video sales letter, and I'm also going to have a CTA as well. So let's break each of these sections down. I always like to have some form of attention-grabbing headline or some form of risk resolver right at the top of the page. And the reason behind that is when we include this, we remove all perceived risk for our audience, which essentially just puts it in their mind, okay, well, this is a risk-free offer for me. I may as well invest my time and carry on reading. Now, in terms of the headline and the sub-headline, your headline should really promise a benefit or a solution related to the reader's pain. Now, this is really important. If you can articulate the solution to a specific problem, people are going to spend more time on the site. And then with the sub-headline, I always like to expand on the main headline, so setting expectations for the content. I also like to sort of, if my guarantee is, I don't know, if I'm lead gen, say, and my guarantee is 50 paid clients, what I might have in my sub-headline is, this is guaranteed, so if you don't hit this, you will get your money back. So as you can see there, the sub-headline is supporting my main headline. Now, the key here is to make sure you use emotional triggers, because that's going to keep the readers invested. And then at the bottom of that hero section, I will always like to have a CTA, which is essentially your call to action, telling your users what to do next. And then underneath there, I'd like to have some form of either credibility booster or reiterating my risk resolver. So let's break it down. So CTA, we're just encouraging our audience to take action. And then having a credibility booster or a risk resolver underneath that CTA reinforces to our audience that they are making the correct decision. So after that hero section, I always like to go into a story section. And this is really important to make sure that you do use storytelling. Storytelling sells, and most importantly, it draws in attention. So what you really want to do is start with a relatable scenario that highlights the problem your product or services face. And if possible, if you can do a transformation story, whether that is talking about your personal experience or a potential client's experience, people are going to be able to relate to that story. They're going to be able to relate to the starting point, and then that transformation is going to set you apart and add a massive amount of authority. Now, whenever you have big blocks of copy, what you want to do is to have and use short paragraphs and varied sentence lengths, which is going to maintain readability and flow. Now, one thing I did sort of miss off on this is going to be the VSL in the hero section. Now, I am going to link to a training on VSLs, but VSLs are something that I will have on pretty much all of my landing pages. And the reason behind that is the average person will only read about 20% of all text on a landing page. So having a VSL that agitates the pain, showcases your USPs, your unique selling propositions, and builds trust, builds authority, alleviates any risk, will just ensure that everybody who lands on your page clearly understands your product and service. So after the story section, what I like to do is have a collection of reviews, case studies, or transformation stories. And what we're going to do here is we're going to build even more trust and credibility on top of the story that we've articulated here. Now, if possible, you want to make sure that you use video reviews, but if you don't have those available, static images are absolutely fine. Now, one thing that I'm a really big fan of when I use reviews is to use screenshots rather than just written out reviews. And the reason behind that is when you use screenshots of, say, Trustpilot or Google reviews or Facebook reviews or any other third-party review collection tool, it comes with an element of authenticity or trust, right? And the problem is there's so many businesses out there that use fake reviews, that just gets their friends and family to leave them reviews, and that has sort of tarnished the credibility of reviews, which is why I personally like to use screenshots. So actually, before we go on to that, one thing I will sort of pick up on this is when you use testimonials, you want to make sure that you use a wide variety of different testimonials. So people starting out at slightly different places. And again, this is going to be incredibly important because if you have let's say you have a Facebook ads course, right? If all three of your reviews are from somebody who's just starting out, and you had 3 reviews that said, okay, I went from 0 to 5K a month, that's really good for those beginner guys. But if you have anybody that maybe is at 10 to 15K a month, they might see those reviews and think, okay, well, this is a little bit more entry level and it might not be something that's suitable for me. So you want to make sure that you use a wide variety to capitalize on everybody in the market. Then you've got another CTA and your credibility risk reversal. I'm not going to go into this point here, but what I always like to do is place CTAs after interesting points or credibility boosters. And the reason behind that is it makes your audience feel like CTAs are a natural next step rather than an interruption. So after I have gone into my reviews and my CTA, I really want to focus on like the general content flow. And what I always like to do when I'm structuring content is follow the problem, agitation, solution framework. This is just going to allow for a more interesting narrative. So you want to dig into the problem, you want to agitate the problem, and then you want to present your product as a solution. And taking this slightly slower approach will just encourage your audience to stay on and read your content. If you're selling your product straight away without sort of diving into the problems, agitating those problems, and not getting your audience into an emotional state, you're going to have a much harder time to convert. But what we're doing here is we're building out a story, transformation story, which is going to improve our credibility and trust. We're then supporting that trust even more by reviews and case studies. And then we're going into sort of digging into the problem even more and presenting our product as a solution. The flow is just so much better, right? So after I have built out my content flow, I will always have a summary of the core benefits. And that really ties back into this point here and the fact that the average person will only read about 20% of all text. So there's a really strong chance that your audience aren't going to read all of this copy. So what I always like to do is make sure that I have a section underneath there that's usually just some form of icon, a strong headline, and then just 1 to 2 sentences that's articulating your benefits. And And what this is going to do is it's going to encourage more people to read it because it's in an easily digestible, scannable design, right? And then at the bottom of the page, what I'm going to do is have more social proof. And this is really important. You want to make sure that you sprinkle social proof throughout. And this is mainly just to reinforce the effectiveness of your product and service. And then at the bottom half of the page, I'm going to have my final offer and my CTA. And to sort of make this even more effective with that final CTA, you want to make it an irresistible offer that ties directly into your story. So I hope all that makes sense. If you have any questions, if you have any concerns on this, please let me know and I'll be more than happy to help.